With John McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald. We are Macamarks 365. All right, a little context here. Over the weekend, I follow Brad Spielberger on Twitter, and I see his latest mock draft, and I go, oh, shoot, we got to get Brad on. I want to talk to him about his mock draft. And then the Jalen Hurts signing happened, so I go, John, you got to reach out to Brad. See if you get him on the show tomorrow. We definitely need to talk to Brad Spielberger tomorrow. And then he shows up in a burnt orange T-shirt. Are you trying to tell us something?
Texas,
Your mock
baby.
had you going for the Redskins. Are we going to get Bijan Robinson here in Philadelphia? What are you up to, Spielberger?
It's a Bears shirt, so I don't know if that's any indication of anything. But
yeah, we go Bears. By the way,
I don't know about Bijan, but I mean, hey, it's they're sitting there at 10, and all the trench players that they like are off the board at that point. Maybe they do it, but I personally don't see it.
By the way, how does a Bears guy intern with the Vikings? How'd you get through that?
Yeah, I think the short answer is in the NFL, you take any job you can get. I don't be too picky.
Good point. All right. Well, we're going to get out of the way, Brad. How can the largest contract in NFL history by some metrics be team friendly, but the Eagles pulled it off, man? I'm amazed at the cap numbers out there. Now, we don't have official numbers, but if you look at Schefter's numbers for the first 4 years of this cap, how did they do it? How did they structure this deal?
Yeah, I think he very kindly, as a favor to whoever gave this information, intentionally cut it off after 2026 because in 2027 and 2028, we're looking at $75-80 million cap hits, right? So that's how. So my guess is we know the signing bonus about $24 million. There's probably an option bonus for about $40 million in the second year, another option bonus for about $40 million in the third year, and a third option bonus for about $50 million in the fourth year of this contract. So basically what it is here's the simplest way to look at it. They've essentially gone ahead and restructured the contract ahead of time, right? So instead of having the big salary, getting to that year and restructuring the deal, again, I probably explained this in the show before, but restructuring is converting salary into a bonus and pushing those cap hits out. The Eagles basically said, we'll just do that right out of the gate and get it ahead. So there's probably void years attached to this contract as well. You can push cap hits into those void years, especially those later option bonuses. That's relevant. But yes, he's not a magician. There are going to be gigantic cap hits in 2027, 2028.
Now, when you say option bonuses, is it truly an option or is it guaranteed? He's guaranteed almost $180 million. Are those option bonuses locked in and guaranteed? And if so, why the use of the word option?
Yeah, that's a good question. So these ones, I would say, look, the 2024 and 2025 are fully guaranteed at signing, no doubt. I'm guessing the 2026 one is probably, injury guaranteed only at signing, maybe becomes fully guaranteed at a later date. So yeah, it's a good question. They are technically options, but what happens is usually the language is if the team does not exercise the option, the player still gets all that money in salary fully guaranteed. So it's a funny way to essentially just prorate more money. But yeah, and there is truly an option tied to it. But really what it is technically Hurts would have all that money in salary. And then if the team exercises the option, everything above the minimum salary turns into a bonus and gets prorated over the life of the deal. So for these ones, like you said, is it really an option and is it really not going to get paid? No. But, for the last one, in the contract, it's possible they do decline that option and maybe the full guarantees don't kick in and they can get out of that final one. But even that one, I think, might become fully guaranteed by, let's say 2025, maybe even 2024. And so in reality, it's also probably fully guaranteed as well.
Brad, one mechanics thing first, and then I want to talk about the cap numbers again. But you mentioned the voidable years. I saw one cap expert sort of put 2 voidable years. I meant to ask you in the past, but and even I don't. I try to do the best I can with this stuff, but there's got to be a limit to void years. And how do they figure that out? Is it involved with the length of the contract? In other words, how many void years can teams put on these deals? And then from the perspective, I look at I look at the cap numbers and I say, well, they can build this team for 4 years before they have to do something, restructure, whatever. And you mentioned that term. I heard that term before. They essentially did the restructure early. Have you ever seen a team do this before? Get
Yeah.
ahead of the curve?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just get ahead of the curve and sort of turn it on its head.
Yeah. So to the first point with the void years, there's probably not an actual limit, but you can only prorate money up to 5 years. So there's no need for more than, let's say, 4 void years, because that final real year of the contract, you could then push money over that final real year and 4 additional void years. There's no real usage to have more than 4 because they wouldn't serve any purpose. So that's the answer to that question. And yes, there are teams that do this. So the Cleveland Browns, shockingly, with Andrew Berry, also do this as well. You know, Myles Garrett had a double option bonus structure in his contract, and essentially the Browns got out ahead of it and, quote unquote, you know, like I said, they basically restructured ahead of time. I'm sure he borrowed that from his time learning under Howie Roseman. The Bills did it with Josh Allen's contract. So you see it here and there, but the Eagles are definitely the team that does it the most. And you know, they have more prorated money than any other team. I know people talk about the Saints a lot. The Saints don't do this. What they do instead is they wait. They have all the money in salary or roster bonuses that are all in that particular year, and then they just restructure when they get there, as opposed to doing it ahead of time.
And the Eagles have made it work for them before. We'll see if this one does. But there is a potential downside if we get to the $80-some-odd million potential dead cap hit. Yeah, that's never been done before in the National Football League. I can guarantee you that. All right. With the fact that they've made their commitment to Jalen, and we know what direction they're going in, certainly a quarterback, and keeping it as cap friendly as they have, you think the Eagles are going to do anything between now and the beginning of the season? Will they be aggressive? Players either traded, trying to talk their way off teams, June 1st cuts, and the like? Do you think the Eagles, because of the deal they've done, have now opened the door to upgrade this roster elsewhere?
The cap does matter, but more importantly is the cash. And that is where, in my opinion, the team-friendly structure comes in. Again, yes, the cap is helpful. Technically, Hurts didn't have to agree to that, but I don't see why a player would care. What Hurts did as something of a favor is he's going to earn $60 million in new money through 2024. So the next 2 seasons, he'll have $60 million on top of what he was already owed. That is 6th among quarterbacks, right? So it's actually less than what Dak Prescott earned through the first new year of his contract in Dallas. He had a $66 million signing bonus alone, the biggest in NFL history. So that is what a guy like Patrick Mahomes earned a very little cash through the first couple of years, and that enabled the Chiefs to, you know, extend Chris Jones and extend Travis Kelce and add some talent. So I think the Eagles will be in the market for cap casualties, you know, just like a James Bradbury last year. If the right player comes along at a position of need, gets cut, a good player that they're a fan of, I think they will look to sign and add, you know, more talent to this roster.
We always use that term in football, team friendly. So you're the cap expert. I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you describe this as team friendly as a whole, this deal?
So I would say the early year cash flow staying low is team friendly. It is. It enables them to spend more cash. He could have pushed for, like I said, he could have pushed for more early cash up front, because technically at the end of the day, right, like there is a time value for these players of the money, right? I mean, getting the money as fast as possible, putting it, you know, in investment accounts and letting it grow is beneficial to the players. So that aspect is team friendly. Overall, I think it also is a strong deal for Jalen Hurts, right? He gets about 68% of this deal in new total guarantees. I wrote an article about my projection for Jalen Hurts where I mentioned Carson Wentz got about 62% of the deal in new total guaranteed money. So Hurts surpassed that by a good amount. He obviously does get, you know, the most average per year with $51 million ever. And he didn't have to go to, you know, 6 years like Josh Allen or 10 years like Patrick Mahomes. Like, you know, I think he could have pushed for 4, which would have been even more player friendly. But I do think only going to 5 years, you know, without a 5th-year option because he's not a first-round pick, was friendly for him as well. I think it's a win-win for both parties.
All right. One last cap question for me, and then I got to ask you about your mock draft because you got a couple guys there that go, wait a minute, he's got him dropping down. We'll get to that. The Eagles do business down the road I think more than any other team in the National Football League. They're number 2 right now in dead cap money in the NFL because they do these deals with the voidable years. And at some point, you got to pay the piper. And we hope it doesn't come up with Jalen Hurts that an injury causes his career to get sidetracked because, man, the price they'll have to pay when they get to the last 2 years of this deal is off the charts. Are they smarter than everybody else? Are they doing this right, rolling the dice, facing a doomsday potential scenario, but in the meantime, benefiting greatly from it? Is the rest of the league catching up to the Eagles? Are you seeing more of the contracts? You mentioned the Browns with their former executive running the show there. Are more teams going to play the push the salary cap down the road game like the Eagles have done the last several years?
Here's one reason why it's smart is that $1 million under this year's salary cap, $225 million is worth less than or more than in a couple of years from now when the salary cap is $250 million. $1 million in cap dollars, not cash, obviously is a different number. So that is where it comes in that I think Philadelphia realizes we can this future dead money, we're basically getting a discount rate on it, right? Like it's these cap dollars cost less to us and hurt us less down the road than they would right now. So that is smart. The other aspect, though, frankly, and again, you can't hold this against them, but you need an owner that is willing to spend more cash than the salary cap in each year. Jeffrey Lurie will let them spend as much as they want to. Their budget is borderline unlimited, and not every team has that benefit. So you have to also give him credit as well.
Speaking of other budgets, and you're right about Jeffrey Lurie. I always think it's understated when you have an owner who lets you go that extra mile. It's very, very important. The next guys we all expect, well, put Lamar off to the side. We'll talk about him as well. But Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, I mean, this is the floor for them, especially Burrow. And those are two teams that have some issues when it comes to, liquidity and escrow. How much more difficult does this make it for the Bengals to get Joe Burrow done and the Chargers to get Justin Herbert done?
No, it's a great question. So the big thing I thought this offseason was more about term and bringing the contracts back to shorter, because for quarterbacks, you want a shorter deal. Like everyone, I think, thinks, oh, you get longer. If the money's not guaranteed, players have no interest in adding more years and giving teams more control. So I think what will happen there is if the Bengals and or Chargers are not willing to concede on guarantees and earlier cash flows and things like that, these players are going to say, okay, then I'm signing a 3-year or 4-year extension. Those guys, of course, because of the 5th-year option, have 2 years remaining, unlike Hurts, who had 1 year remaining. But yeah, I won't say it makes it much harder. I think the Hurts deal kind of falls where we expected. But yeah, I mean, those guys are going to ask for $52, $53+ million per year. And in those cases, because their ownership groups are not willing to guarantee future money like Philadelphia, I think we will see, maybe the record signing bonus I mentioned, Dak Prescott getting $66 million in a signing bonus. I think Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert might both beat that number because that's the trade-off. Okay, you won't guarantee me more money down the road, then you have to give me way more cash now to protect me and to help me gain money on that money. And that's kind of the back and forth concession. It's not going to be easy to get done. There's no question about that.
Quick follow-up. Sorry, Jody, before you jump in. The Eagles have kind of always believed it's better to be first. Can you ever think of an example where it's not better to be first, and why can't other teams figure that out? It seems to always be better to go first in the long term.
Almost always. And they are the best in the NFL at it. There's no question about it. They do it with, Jordan Mailata and Josh Sweat. We could sit here for an entire episode and talk about how good they are at being first to market. I think the one argument, as more and more time goes on now, I can't tell you the name of the club, but I had a conversation with one team that said in a given offseason, when they're going into the offseason, if there are a couple players at that guy's position that they know all are going to sign an extension in that offseason, they used to be first to market, and they did it a couple times. And what happened was the deals they got were so good, and then a bunch of guys passed them in that offseason, and then a bunch of guys, of course, in the future would pass them. And those players were coming back to them earlier and saying, I want a new deal. Yeah. I'm underpaid now.
I'm gonna blink if it's Danielle Hunter and the Vikings.
No comment. So then,
I thought it might be Buda Baker and the Arizona Cardinals, who we're going to ask you about in just a second.
So, I mean, Danielle Hunter and Stephon Diggs signed the same offseason to remarkably good deals.
Yeah.
And again, this, I'm actually not talking about them in this specific example, but for example, the right tackle Brian O'Neill signed 2 off seasons ago in 2021. Yeah. And there was Taylor Moton, there was Ryan Ramczyk, there was Braden Smith and like all these right tackles got extended. The Vikings went last. And they gave Brian O'Neill, besides Ryan Ramczyk, they gave him the second best contract. But I think in their minds, they say, okay, you know what? Now if you try to come back to us and say, oh, I want more money, I want a better deal, say, we paid you more than everyone else in your draft class. We gave you the best contract of your offseason. We're not going to go back to the table with you right away. We were patient. We let you, so I think that is kind of an angle. Xavier Howard in Miami is another good one. I mean, Miami, the deal there was so good for Miami. He got new money with 4 years left, first player in NFL history. So.
All right, Brad, we appreciate you helping us understand the cap permutations, and we got to wait till it's all official, but you and your buddies over at Over the Cap did a great job over the last 24 hours. All right, I got to get to your mock draft. Hey, let me cut to the chase. C.J. Stroud, number 11. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. It very much looks like Bryce Young is going to end up as a Carolina Panther because it's their pick. They got to make the decision. If Frank Reich likes Bryce Young better than C.J. Stroud, more power to him. We'll see how good Bryce Young is. I think he's going to be very good. I just think Stroud's going to be better. All those teams between 1 and 11 that need a quarterback, none of them are going to take C.J. Stroud. Anthony Richardson's going to go before C.J. Stroud. What don't you like about C.J. Stroud?
It's not a personal opinion at all. I think he might, have an argument as the best quarterback in the class. I'm a Bryce Young guy, but I would have C.J. Stroud second. He was the second most accurate per our charting quarterback in all of college football last season. Obviously has the size. He does struggle pretty mightily against pressure, which is a problem, which does tend to translate to the NFL level. The weirdest thing about his eval, though, is his best game ever playing outside of structure and when plays broke down was against Georgia in the college football playoff.
Yep.
So that make, you never want to have one game impact your eval, but I mean that's basically an NFL defense he played against at Georgia and was phenomenal. So this is not my opinion. There are a lot of rumblings that he could take a bit of a tumble if he does not go 2 to Houston and or 4 to Indianapolis. Here's the thing, Las Vegas, of course, needs a quarterback. Maybe they get into the conversation. And I'll tell you this, I actually more so regret if he's there at 10. Philadelphia is going to shop that pick to, you guys know this. They'll call Tennessee. They'll call, Washington, Tampa Bay, Minnesota. Like they'll call every team and say, hey, if you want C.J. Stroud, if you don't trade with us, someone else is going to. But yeah, I would not be surprised if he falls out of the top 5.
All right, full disclosure, Brad, I have not been kind to your Chicago Bears this offseason. But they're right in front of the Eagles. So I want to get some intel. If the Eagles are forced to stay at 10, I think it's pretty clear the Eagles are the floor for Jalen Carter. Would he ever get by the Bears if he falls that to that point? No.
If Jalen Carter's on the board at 9, he will be a Chicago Bear.
All right. All right, that's bad news for the Eagles. So they're going to have to go up and get it.
Eagles.
Now, I'll throw the Bears because you want to defend it. Look, I do not. To me, it's easy to tear things down. They've done a great job. They had tremendous assets. They got some good players. I think they did a disservice to Justin Fields last year. I don't think they built the offense around him. Tremendous, obviously, athletic skills. He made plays out of nothing. And man, how do you, as a cap guy, how do you give that much money to all ball linebackers? I think they're going to be very happy with TJ Edwards. Here's my prediction to you, Brad. They're going to cut Terrell Edmonds after 2 years because the expectations are going to be so out of whack for him. He's never going to live up to it. They think they're getting Derek Brooks, good player. 3rd year is going to get cut. That's my belief on the Bears.
Yeah, look, I mean, I won't argue. I think it's a possible outcome. I'll tell you this, and this is not me defending the Bears or navy and orange glasses, all those things. This was conversations I had going into free agency. You know, you guys know I do all this work. I had no clue he was even on the Bears' radar. But I mean, the guy's going to be 24 in week 1. He is still that young.
Oh, yeah.
He was the second youngest player in his entire draft class. He is a physical specimen at about 6'5", 250, but can run fast, can run laterally, all these things. People in Buffalo told me this year he started to figure it out. The game slowed down for him. The reason why he struggled in the early years, which they obviously agree with, they didn't extend him, but that, you know, for us, he was one of the highest graded coverage players in our entire system last year, was because they think he finally realized what was going on around him. He wore the green dot. He got everyone in position, and he knew what he was doing. So I hear you. Again, I'm not going to argue with you. It's a possible outcome. You know, it's a possible outcome for every big free agent signing. But yeah, I think they're selling themselves on this guy is now coming into his own, and that's their belief.
I do think he fits Matt Eberflus's scheme.
Absolutely.
Better than Roquan. But I like Roquan.
He's taller. He can run the alley. He's going to be that classic, you know, cover 2 linebacker that covers over the middle. I'm not going to compliment Brian Urlacher, but from a role standpoint, that's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
All right. If the Bears are at 9 right in front of the Eagles at 10, and we're assuming that Jalen Carter isn't available for either the Bears or the Eagles, and he goes in the top 8, are they going offensive line? Are they the team that's going to take Bijan Robinson? That's all we talk about here in Philadelphia. Bijan at 10, Bijan at 10, Bijan at 10. Is there a chance Bijan goes at 9 to the Bears and the Eagles don't have a shot at him either?
So first, I'll say I don't think Carter is going to be there for either team. I think he'll be gone before both of them pick. No, I don't think the Bears will take Bijan. I don't think the Eagles will either. But yeah, if the Eagles want him at 10, I think he will be there. Maybe Atlanta at 8 is obviously now becoming a popular, you know, mock spot. But no, I think the Bears will either go tackle or they will look to trade down. I frankly think their ideal outcome. You of course can't force someone to trade up with you, but I think their ideal outcome is another trade down and then take a tackle in the teens.
There's 4 potential quarterbacks that might go in the top 9. How important is it from a cap standpoint to obviously get the 5th-year option on the quarterback? And how much do you think that pushes guys up the board? I mean, obviously you start talking about the higher you go, that the larger that 5th-year option is, but it's still a lot more cost effective than the second contract, as we're learning here in Philadelphia. So to get that guy, how much do you think it sort of out of whacks the evaluation process, in that I don't think anybody thinks Bryce Young is the best football player in this draft, but he's probably going number 1 overall. Where the best players, whether it's Jalen Carter, he's got some issues, Bijan Robinson at a devalued position. Do you think the NFL's gone too far, is what I'm trying to say, Brad, and saying, all right, this is obviously the most important position, but we're overlooking good football players to take chances?
I'm not sure they're going far enough, frankly. Look, I totally get it. I mean, I don't want to be a total positional value truther in every sense of the word, but if you don't have a good quarterback, nothing matters. Like, it doesn't matter.
That's true. Fair.
And I don't even think I'm being hyperbolic in saying that. Like, you get the best roster on the planet and a replacement level quarterback, and yeah, you're going to win 10 games. You're going to be in purgatory. You'll maybe win a playoff game. Like, it just does not matter. So, look, should you take a guy every single year? Should you be trading up and taking no? But realistically, I get it with quarterback. I think besides that, I think you can say maybe we're overvaluing a little bit other spots. But as for the 5th-year option point, I do think that is. And it might change now because that option is now fully guaranteed the day you exercise it. I think there's less value in that than we historically have thought, for 2 reasons. So A, the fact it's fully guaranteed. B, if the guy is good enough after the first 3 seasons, you're probably going to extend him anyway, right? Like the 5th-year option might not even matter. Now, again, it still gives you another year of control. You can still negotiate off of it. Like I mentioned for Burrow and Herbert, if those guys sign 5-year extensions, you have 7 years of control, versus 6 for Hurts. So it does help. It does matter. But look at this past season. The Giants declined Daniel Jones' option. Doesn't really matter. The Atlanta Falcons declined Caleb McGarry, the tackle. Does not matter. The Raiders declined Josh Jacobs, the running back. His franchise tag was $1.5 million more than what his fifth-year option would have been. Who cares, right? So I do think to a degree it should not dictate your decisions besides quarterback. The only reason I think it makes sense is, you're sitting there at 35 or the Indianapolis Colts and say you don't take a quarterback. I think they will. You don't take a quarterback and you call the Eagles at 30 and say, hey, we want to come up and get a quarterback, at 30 to get that fifth-year option. That to me is the most important area. It's Lamar Jackson. That he was the same thing with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, that's the one area where I think it makes all the sense in the world. Otherwise, I do think it is a bit overblown.
Speaking of Lamar Jackson, what's going to happen there, Mr. Over the Cap? It comes down to a negotiation and guaranteed money and everything else. Is there a compromise position between he and the Ravens? And can they get it done before the draft? Because if not, do the Ravens address the quarterback position in the draft?
I mean, maybe after yesterday's news, Lamar sees another contract come in with fairly standard guarantee structures and is willing to come back to the table. Like, if Lamar is not willing to sign a contract unless it has the fully guaranteed money Deshaun Watson has, I don't think he's signing a contract. I think he will play on the franchise tag and then try to do it again, and maybe someone else will pay him. And ignoring the fact that he's missed some time and had some injury issues, all those things. I just don't see a scenario where the compromise is the Ravens giving him the fully guaranteed money he's looking for. Will they meet in the middle? Maybe. But like it sounds like he wouldn't even take that. Yesterday's contract, I think from a value standpoint was good news for Lamar Jackson. From a, guarantee and structure standpoint, it's just another notch against what he's trying to get.
Let me give you the compromise position. I put this out on CBS over the weekend. He comes in, signs the tender, agrees to play, but the Ravens promise to not tender him the year after. Is that something that could work for both? Who says no in that scenario?
Yeah, so you can add that language to a franchise tag so that, because people know this, that's actually a negotiable one-year contract. He could also ask for more money, and he could ask for a no-tag clause, which Jadeveon Clowney did. So, I mean, the thing is, though, like, if you're the Ravens, why would you do that, right? Because then you could just tag him for a year and then lose him. You have no leverage to keep him. It'd be great for Lamar Jackson. I just see no benefit. What do the Ravens get out of that?
The benefit is that who's their backup quarterback again? I don't even remember.
Tyler Huntley. I mean, I hear you.
Tyler Huntley's starting 17 games
Rock
next
solid,
year.
baby.
You ready to go there if you're the Ravens? That's the upside. You got Lamar Jackson actually
He's
playing
going to
quarterback.
play. He's not going to leave all that.
I'd be surprised if he does, sit out, right? I think he will. I think he'll wait until the day before week 1 to sign the franchise tag. He might not do a single offseason activity, but I would be somewhat surprised if he misses time this upcoming year.
Yeah. Lamar's a different bird.
Yeah.
He's a little bit of a different animal.
I'm going to put you on the spot for the last one at PFF_Brad. Make sure you read Brad at Pro Football Focus, contributor Over the Cap, does a tremendous job, as you've seen here today. Best contract in free agency, worst contract in free agency.
Yeah, I'll go with Orlando Brown with the Bengals as the best one. Effectively a 3-year, $50 million deal. 4 years, 64 is the full term. Look, is he an elite tackle, one of the best in the NFL? No, but we see Laramie Tunsil signed for 3 years, $75 million, like a week later. Is he $10 million worse than the best? No, like it's a great contract for them. He totally overplayed his hand in Kansas City and signs a very team-friendly contract as a result. The worst, I'll go with Jimmy Garoppolo. I just don't know what the Raiders are doing. I think the Houston Texans were the only other team in that market. My understanding is their offer was not quite where he got from the Raiders, but anyway, basically 2 years guaranteed. I think he's a worse quarterback than Derek Carr. I just don't get what they're doing. If they get a quarterback in the draft, I think it's more palatable as a bridge. But if they don't, they're just stuck in purgatory, and I just don't get it.
Eagle fans, despite the fact that he wore a Bears T-shirt here with us on Birds 365, I thought it was burnt orange for Bijan Robinson. So that tells you what I know. We love having Brad Spielberger on because he brings knowledge to the table that John and I just don't have. Brad, thank you very much for doing it. We're going to have you back on again. Appreciate you jumping in with us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brad.
Brad Spielberger. Follow on both Pro Football Focus and
I nailed when he was trying to wink. I knew it was Danielle Hunter, and I forgot about Stephon Diggs.
That was a good one by you, Johnny Mac. All right, and as soon as you said it, I go, oh, he's going back to his Viking roots. That makes sense. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.